Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, presented by Cooper Tires. My guest this episode, Verizon IndyCar Series rookie Zach Veach and his father, Roger Veach. This might be one of my favorite stories in many years, and it follows the lines of champion fathers and the sons who follow in their footsteps. We think of Marco Andretti, son of Michael Andretti, an IndyCar champion, who's a son of an IndyCar and Formula One champion in Mario Andretti. Think of Graham Rahal, son of a three-time IndyCar champion, Indy 500 winner, and Bobby Rahal. We think of Zach Veach, whose father Roger is also a champion. Zach is definitely cut from that same champion's cloth if we're thinking of lineage. So for Roger, not an IndyCar driver, not a NASCAR driver, not a sports car champion. He's a champion in the sport of tractor pulling. And as someone who grew up, for reasons I don't know, in California, but loving this kind of very heavily Midwestern cherished thing, it blew me away to learn about this fact about Zach and Roger years ago. And now that we have Zach entering his first full season as an IndyCar driver with Andretti Autosport, knowing that he'll be teaming up with Marco Andretti, again, son of champion, grandfather of champion, and heading into a series where so much family history between Unsers and you name it, just absolutely central to this world of open-wheel racing. Wanted to get together with Roger and Zach. We did that at the recent Phoenix Open test in February to discuss this topic. What was it like growing up as the son of a champion tractor puller? What was it like helping him? What did you learn? And I think most interesting for me at least, how did you go from being a kid raised in the middle of the farmland in Stockdale, Ohio, part of this tractor pulling family, and hang a hard right and head to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? So that was the topic here. Spent about 30 minutes or so discussing this, and I don't need to hide my affection for the two of them. Just a lovely family. And the sporting stuff, the wins and the pole positions and how Zach will fare as a rookie, that's all going to sort itself out on its own. Just for the people themselves, the quality of the characters that are in the series, that's something that for me, don't need to wait to appreciate that. They're already a pretty awesome addition. You know, you can get every episode of the Marshall Pruitt Podcast presented by Cooper Tires on iTunes, also on Podbean, on our Marshall Pruitt Podcast Facebook page, and one of the brand new additions is we've also embarked upon a Google Play site too. So even more places for you to catch us. And with all that said, we are off with Roger and Zach Veach to talk about the road from tractor pulling to IndyCar.
You come from championship motor racing stock. It doesn't involve going in circles. It doesn't involve road racing. Your father here, again, as a champion. Tell me about this very unique entry into the world of motor racing that is unlike anything we've seen before in IndyCar.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping in another 40 years my son can say that he got his pedigree from me in road racing, but my dad gave me a very good sense of traction coming from the world of truck and tractor pulling. So from a young age, when I was much littler than I am now, if you believe that, started off with antique tractors. You had a Farmall that you all built yourself.
Yeah, we
and that was kind of his USF 2000 Pro Mazda, if you want to say, into two-wheel drive pulling.
And this is growing up in Ohio?
Yeah, we're the land of truck and tractor pulling and sprint car racing.
Well, it goes a little deeper. My parents actually, in the 70s, pulled a mini rod.
Really?
And so basically it was a 351 Cleveland Ford with a plastic seat on top of a 9-inch rear end. And they won the state championship. My dad won the 1,700-pound class, and he was too heavy to pull the 1,500-pound class, so they threw my mom on there. And she got second or third in the state that year. So I mean, it was crazy, and that was back in the days where it was raw. There was no helmets, no seat belts, no anything. They jumped in. It was like a fold up yard chair on the back of it, and away they go.
How crazy.
Yeah.
So Zach, I grew up, my father was an amateur road racer in the San Francisco Bay Area, so as I've always joked, I was just part of his loading list for SCCA weekends. Toolbox, jack, kid, throw them in the back, and off you go. what was it like for you growing up as, part of your dad's packing list in this world of, again, I came into this world through, call it traditional routes, road racing, elite, right? Did anything beyond pulling stand out to you as a little kid growing up in this? What was it like?
For me, something that's very similar was just the community aspect of it. And for me, I'm talking about a community of kids. I'm sure for you, it's the same as what I have now when you show up to the track with guys like Gabby and, Power. It's your family. But a lot of kids were brought to all the pools by their fathers. So for me, when I showed up, it was my little community of a lot of kids my same age. So that was fun. And I have a brother that's about 5 years older than me. So he was the one that helped Dad mainly with the work, just because at that time I was 5 to 9, 5 to 10. So he would help my father rebuild the engines more so. So I would always get given the rag and wax or the Swiffer duster. So from the early on, it was my job to clean all the dirt out of the wheels and off the back of the truck and just polish anything that wasn't shiny.
This isn't a little formula car with a few bugs. This is tractor pulling dirt, diesel, God knows what. So, wow, you were teaching this kid work ethic at a young age, Raj.
It was so funny. We've got some pictures where he was so tiny. And he was actually taking mothers to the aluminum wheels, and him standing there only made it to about half of the height of the wheel. And he was up inside there just polishing away.
So tell me about this from your perspective, Roger. So, father, you enjoy the sport. Again, you're achieving success in this. How much time are you able to, I don't want to say dedicate to your family, but while you're there, while you're having to, whether it's prepare the track or whatever else, you're there competing.
Yeah.
How much are you able to focus on your sons and the family aspect of this? How much are you just kind of letting them observe Dad doing something fun and sporting, but also with a professional approach?
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool because I think a lot of it helped them realize that there's no dream you can't chase. Because it was something I always wanted to do. My parents didn't have the budget to, go at the higher level like I did. And so, it's something from it was so funny, when I was in high school, I gathered all the parts and pieces to build a truck. And so it come time to go to college, and so I had some money put back, and I could either use that money to go to college, or I could buy an engine for that truck.
We know how these things often go in motor racing.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. I went to college.
Wow.
And and looking back, I felt like I missed it. And then I was lucky. My company was successful, and I just the way I got started back into it, a friend of mine had a antique pulling tractor, and he wanted a computer, and so I got him a computer, and I went to his house, and I seen that, and I said, what are you going to do with that thing? He said, I've been trying to sell it, but I haven't been able to find anyone to buy it. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll trade you the computer for it. And so he said, yeah. I said, I'd love to do that.
That might be the best trade in the history of the world.
So I took that thing home, and first thing we did, we tore it apart, and we took a 4-cylinder engine that was normally 38 horsepower, took it up to 600 cubic inch.
Oh my gosh!
It was, and in the time it was antique, so it was putting out about 275 horsepower after we got done with it.
Wow.
We had our own head casted. There was a guy in Rushville, Indiana, that casted a head for us, and so we did that. And we just dominated. Just went right out and did great. So as I was doing that, I went to a pool at Bowling Green, which you've probably been to Bowling Green. And Roger Simon and Stan Shelton was up there, and I was watching those guys, and I thought, man, I want to do this. And so I went home and told my dad, I said, I'm going to do this. He said, okay. So about a week later, tires showed up. I had a Bob Jostock in Michigan built me a rear end and bought me a set of frame rails, and I just built the thing entirely myself. When Brian Knox, Sassy Racing Engines, I went to them. They were really good to help me get started because, I was coming into it as a novice.
Sure.
They got me started and went from there. But, the thing with the boys, I always had them involved, and I always tried to teach them to do what I was doing, because that's something my dad did with us growing up. And I had Brandon, my oldest son. He was rebuilding engines at 14. He was restripping SSI blowers. So here's this kid, putting together $65,000 engines.
Wow.
So that was really cool. And then Zach would help us with the cleaning, and he would help us get the gator ready. That was his job, was to get all that lined up, and
because you got to drive.
Yeah,
the gator was my domain.
Wow.
I could barely reach the pedals. So I had to sit on the front of the seat, but that was my proud part.
Yeah, but motorsports has been so good for me in the relationships with my two boys, because Brandon, from the time he was 9 until 17, he was with me every weekend, every evening, going to his truck pulls. And then when Zach, came to me, he was wanting to race. I told him, so buddy, I said, you got to be 15 to do this. And he goes, no, Dad. I said, I want to drive IndyCar, and if I don't get started soon, I'm going to be too old. So this was at 11. And I was in the Enderley pull-off that year. And I went up there, and I ran with Sullivan's. Those guys become my best friends in the world. They still are to this day. And Sullivan's were the guys that invented two-wheel drive class.
Yeah.
They created it. So we were hooking at the Enderley pull-off, and once I got in the truck and got set up, I got on the radio. I said, guys, this is the last time I'm going to run.
Wow.
And they laughed, and they said, yeah, this year it is. And so I made my run, and as I was going back to the trailer, there was I come up with a lot of cool designs when I was building stuff, and I had this one guy that would always buy my trucks whenever I'd go to sell them, Andy Teasley. So I was going back to the transporter, and I told Andy was walking. I said, hey, Andy, so you want to buy this truck? He goes, yeah, you going to build a new one? I said, not exactly. So this was Saturday night at 10:30, and by Monday morning at 9 a.m., tractor, trailer, transporter, 3 engines, all kinds of spares, everything was gone. I bought a go-kart, and I told him, I said, anytime you want to go to the track, I'll take you. Anytime turned into every day. We were literally at the track 7 days a week.
That's a heck of a sacrifice. I mean, if you think about that, Zach, I mean, your father's passion, the willingness to say, okay, I've gone very far with mine. I've become a champion.
Of course.
I'm going to intentionally put that aside and sell that and use those proceeds to help push you forward. That's pretty amazing.
You always hear, the joke, I want to be a better parent than mine was. And he set the bar way too high.
Yeah.
I think it's just a timing thing. He jokes that when I have my own kids, I'll understand. But I look at it now, especially being here in a paddock as an IndyCar driver. And, that was your IndyCar driver. I mean, that was your dream. And it's just, it would take so much. So, how much I appreciate is that is so great. But it's funny, I didn't understand what was going on at first. I just knew that my dad was selling things.
Look, there's a go-kart.
Well, yeah. So he's terrible with surprises, and because of that, I've become the same way. So all of a sudden, the transporter and everything was gone, and we had this empty shop. And my grandparents, his father has a trucking company, so we'd always haul trash, basically. Our trash from the end of the week or from the race shop. We'd put it in the back of the gator, take it up to the trucking company, throw it in the dumpster. And we were throwing things into the dumpster, and I was standing on the back of the gator like I'd always do. And he goes, hey, there's going to be a pretty big box coming next week. And I'm like, okay, why are you telling me this? I'm confused. And then he paused, and like 3 or 4 minutes go by, and he goes, it's a surprise. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then another 10 minutes go by, and he goes, it's a go-kart. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. So, yeah, but, I knew kids were racing from the time, they were 5 or 6. So starting at 12, when he said we can go any day that you wanted, I felt there was just a bit of pressure to make up for lost time. And part of it, I just loved driving. I mean, you give a kid a go-kart and you allow him to go faster than he's ever really gone before, and you don't want to walk away from it. And we were lucky to find a lot of people to help us along the way, because the physics of pulling and the physics of competitive karting are slightly different, you would think.
So it was so crazy because we were at Circleville